We are a free people, a sovereign people, and we can decide to have any constitution of our liking with principles, of course. I have my own views, but I want the people to say what they would want. But we are the drivers, and we dare not surrender that to anyone else.
Chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kwaishe kana dzimba dzedu dzingadai dziri dzavo mawanzira vanoita dzimba dzavo vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu umwe chete vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu umwe chete vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti.
In 2013, Zimbabweans made an amazing and life-binding decision when they decided to come up with a homegrown constitution, the Zimbabwe Constitution, mostly referred to by many people as the 2013 Constitution. But this is amendment number 20 of the Constitution, which is now our legal document that guides on our rights, responsibilities as the people of Zimbabwe. Many young people have not taken a keen interest in this constitution. They don't understand their rights. Chief among them, the rights to education, the rights to freedom of expression, the rights to vote. We are going to be discussing with young people what they understand about the Constitution, how the Constitution impacts on their lives, and how they can take advantage of the Constitution to further their future, their interests, and those of those who will come after them. On this, the situation right now, in proud partnership with We Lead, young women organization who are conscious about the Constitution and have gone all out to ensure that all Zimbabweans appreciate and understand the Constitution. Join me after this break as we join the students from various tertiary institutions around the country to discuss the Zimbabwean Constitution, the people's rights, and what we understand about it in partnership with We Lead. Welcome back to the situation right now with me, your host as usual, Dara B. Mhlanga, and in studio I've got an unusual cast, amazing young people, the future of this country from various universities across the country, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and in their introduction I want them to just tell us what they understand about the Constitution. What is the Constitution to you? I'll start with you, Boris Johnson. Boris, the university you come from, and what you understand about the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. I respond to the name Boris Mangudya. I'm a student at the Bill State University in Gweru, the biggest state university in the country in terms of numbers. When it comes to the Constitution, mine is a very short definition, because I understand the Constitution as a social contract between the state and the citizen. basically these are rules that regulate both the government and the citizens that live within a nation.
Amazing, Boris. Thank you very much. I'm going to come to the amazing lady next to me, Wangai. You can just kindly introduce yourself, which university you come from, and what is your understanding when we talk about the Constitution.
Okay, my name is Wangai Kawa. I'm the spokesperson of Shiros, which is a women-led organization, and I'm also a student on attachment from Great Zimbabwe University. My understanding of the term constitution, I think it is the supreme law of the land. It is a broader law, in which other laws hinges on. So it contains of the rights and responsibilities which guides the cities, the general citizens, the youths, and the ordinary people in Zimbabwe.
Are you a lawyer? Are you studying law?
No, I'm studying media.
Oh, okay. No, that explains it. That explains it. You are studying media. I'll come to you, the university you're from, and your understanding of the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Rubitai Wendi Idana, and I'm from the University of Zimbabwe, and I'm also a Secretary General for the Junior Court Club, so I'm studying law.
And your understanding of the Constitution?
Okay. My understanding of the Constitution is that the Constitution is like a set out of the laws that we have in our country, which actually define the structure of the state. It also defines the exercise of power, and also, as he said, it is a contract between the individual and the state. It also shows the relationship we have between the state and the individuals.
Now I want to just staying with you. Do you think in your interactions with your fellow students, maybe who are not doing law, because you're doing law and you are supposed to understand the Constitution. It's the basis of your studies, right? But the other people, do you think they understand the Constitution and it matters to them?
Well, I don't think people understand the Constitution because many people are from various institutions, are from various areas. It is very rare that you get a person who is actually in line with the law and who is actually getting an opportunity to come in contact with the law and to actually be able to get to understand what the Constitution is and what it has and the chapters and the provisions within that Constitution.
So our discussion right now, this afternoon, is basically going to hinge on understanding how we can leverage on students or young people to understand the Constitution, to use it to advance their rights and responsibilities in this country. Now I'll come to you, Boris, and say, you at the biggest university in numbers. I'm not sure which one is the biggest university in terms of quality of the education, but as you interact, how have you managed to use the Constitution in your life as a young person and as a student in a university?
Okay, thank you very much. I think in my introduction I forgot to indicate that I'm also the legal secretary for the most vibrant and biggest students' union in the country, the Zimbabwe National Students' Union, well known as ZANU-PF. So by that I've had an opportunity to interact with students, not just at my institution, but from various institutions around the country, including universities, teachers' colleges, and polytechnic colleges. And what I've discovered is that a lot of students do not have an appreciation of what the Constitution is. They do not comprehend what is contained in the Constitution. So basically I've tried my best to make sure that we conscientize students themselves, because this is a very important component in the society itself, a component of people who understand issues better than others do in the society. So we've managed to give them a mandate to say, no, you have to go through the Constitution in order for you to know your rights. And after understanding that Constitution, you have to go and conscientize your societies back where you come from. If you come from Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe, when you go for holidays, you have to go and interpret the constitution to the people, to the residents of Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe. If you come from Dotito, if you come from Chitungiza, you have to read the constitution, understand it, and when you go back to the society, you have to go and articulate the constitution to the society itself.
But back to my question, how have you interacted with the constitution in terms of asserting your rights, if you have any, or if any rights violations have come your way?
Okay, number one, I happen to be part of a group that fights for, number one, free education, and number two, academic freedoms. So the constitution actually acts as our canvas. We use the constitution to make sure that the advocacy that we are doing is issue-based. So we mainly use section 75 of the Zimbabwean constitution, which talks about accessible and quality education, which says everyone has the right to education. So from this basis, this is how we use the constitution to make sure that we advance our fight in the student movement. Number two, when it comes to academic freedoms, we also use the constitution, the national constitution, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, as the guideline, which sets clear principles on what the government is supposed to do in terms of promoting academic freedoms within this nation.
Amazing. We'll come to that, because I've seen students trying to do demonstrations for the right to education and stuff like that, and you've got into a bit of some hold-ups, and I want us to understand how you have used the law to deal with it, because it's one thing to talk about the constitution, it's another to use it. But Wangai, in your being a spokesperson for your organization, Sheroes, and also being a media student, what has been the biggest threat in your view to the Constitution of Zimbabwe? What do you think we should defend, or why should we defend the Constitution? What is the threat?
I think the critical issue to the Constitution is that the Constitution is just more powerful on paper and not really applicable in our daily life, right? Especially the Constitution talks about the gender balance between men and women, but really gender balance in day-to-day life, women are not being equalized to men. They are not given opportunities. In my field as a media student, we normally use section 61 and 62 of the Constitution, which talks about access to information and the freedom of expression of the media and access to information. But it's as well it's not applicable in the media field that we have in Zimbabwe. Why? Because the media is so much under the control of the state. The media is not free in Zimbabwe. Then when it comes to youth, it is written in section 20 of the Constitution, I think subsection B, subsection C, I think. The youths are afforded opportunities for employment and other avenues to economic empowerment. This is just on paper, but not in our day-to-day lives. Look the rates at which the youths are unemployed in Zimbabwe. They are now indulging in drug abuse. Look at the rate at which armed robbery is rising in Zimbabwe. They are the youths. So I don't know how the Constitution has to apply in real lives rather than being on paper only. Why? Because the youths are the most vulnerable in Zimbabwe. They are not employed, but the Constitution states that they have to be provided for the opportunities to be employed. So I think there should be measures at which the Constitution applies in our day-to-day life. Looking at the economic situation of this country right now, I don't think if there could not be possible measures I think, to revisit the constitution so that it suits the current economic situations of the country.
Amazing. Now she talks about the words in here and not the effect. Now, as a person who's specializing in studying the law, and they say that the legal profession is actually the last bulwark to democracy and defending the constitution. Am I right? So what do you think, as a young person and as a future Beatrice Mtetwa, what do you think should be done? You know, what do you think we should do as citizens of this country to ensure that what she talks about on paper is reflected?
Okay, well, the thing is, when it comes to constitutions, there are different types of constitutions. So we have a scenario where there is a de jure constitution, then there is also a de facto constitution. We have a de jure constitution, which is actually what is supposed to be the actual legal side of the law. Then we have the de facto, which will be more of like what is actually happening, the reality of the world. So it turns out that in Zimbabwe, we do have a written constitution, which is also another type. We have a written constitution which provides for the rights of people, but then they are not actually implemented. So that will end up just giving a de jure constitution, where we actually have the theoretical legal side, but then they are not actually implemented and practicalized into the de facto constitution, which would be actually the actual reality. So in order to bridge the gap there, we actually have to first understand what is written in the constitution and then be able to implement them, to be able to understand which arm of government is there to support in that implementation of the laws that are written there. So we also have the legislature, which will be able to assist us, which is the courts, the judiciary, the high court, the magistrate court. They're actually able to give remedies to people who are actually affected, whose rights are actually infringed. We also have section.
But some of your colleagues who are lawyers have argued that the courts are captured, and maybe talk to me about that, because you say that the courts are able to bring life in terms of protecting. Yes. So if they then become captured, as some of your colleagues have said in the legal fraternity, what then?
Well, I think the problem is there might be a fear within the country that maybe siding to a certain political party would actually affect someone. So at times one might end up deciding basing on the actual ground of the world, of the country. Then that would end up affecting their decisions and would lead to adverse injustices to the people. Unfortunately, people will then suffer in that case whereby the courts are actually siding with one political party, which might actually affect the decisions that they make within those courts. So that actually affects the people who are part of those cases. So the thing is then up to us to be able to continue fighting for those rights that are provided for in the Constitution.
So de facto, we are here. Yes, you wanted to say something.
Okay, basing on what she said.
Right? Yes.
Basing on what Rumidzai said, I think right now, looking at the youths, I'm not sure if all of them knows the Constitution. Why? Because I think it's so much one-sided to one political party. So I don't think they have that eager to understand the Constitution. Why? Because it is not applicable in their lives. It's just on paper, but not applicable in their lives.
Amazing. Now let us talk about this de jure, de facto. For you, how do you think we could bridge that gap between the reality, the written, what is supposed to be? For instance, the Constitution provides that government should do everything within its power to ensure that people have access to clean water. And we don't have water in our life. We don't have water even in universities. Where you stay in the Midlands State University, some of your hostels don't have water. But do you have that right? And you, earlier on, were talking about the right to affordable education.
Okay, thank you very much, Blessed. That is a very important question for me. These are very direct issues. Earlier on, I talked about issue-based advocacy. So this would be an opportunity for young people, students to be specific, to practice issue-based advocacy when there is no water on campus. Yet you know that in the Constitution, it is a right to have water. So these are clear issues. The students should then be able to converge and agree on the way forward. They should be able to sit down as students without anyone, because a lot of people have problems of saying when they have a problem within their society, within their constituents, they want to wait for someone to come and help them raise their voice. So they have to converge in their specific campuses, they have to converge in their specific societies and raise their voices, be it holding the particular leaders accountable or the specific leaders of that institution, be it the deputy registrar, be it the dean of students. They should be able to pen down petitions and submit them to the relevant offices.
But that is the biggest accusation that even your institution, ZANU, has faced over the past, that every time you demand certain rights in the Constitution, you are accused of being funded by the US Embassy, EU, and stuff like that. Let's discuss that.
That's malicious. What's Western about saying we want water? What's Western about saying we want affordable education? What's Western about that? What's Western about saying fees must fall? Because these are issues which are there on the ground. Everyone knows that our parents are earning poor salaries. Some of my colleagues call them peanuts. Our parents are earning peanuts, but you have fees being increased, doubling the salary of your parents. Because the minimum wage of a civil servant right now in this country is pegged at around 22,000 TGS, but you have a student at an institution of higher learning paying something like 120,000 TGS. Food and accommodation is not included there. So how can you balance that for any sane Zimbabwean? Is that logical? So when we raise our voices to say, no, this is injustice, this must be corrected, we are labeled as Western puppets. What's Western about demanding our rights?
Amazing. What is Western about demanding rights? But do you, for instance, Wangai, I want to talk about the ideal situation, right? Do you, having gone through the Constitution, do you think that all the laws that are required, or the framework that is required to give you your rights and access to them is in this Constitution?
Like what I said, they're just in Constitution, but not applicable in real life, right? Look, even we are being deprived of exercising the rights that are written in the Constitution. Look at the recent issue at Parirenyatwa, Manesis Pakaratidzira. What then did the police did? We have several issues. According to the Constitution, right? But then that right is being deprived because one every time. Even though we have the right to demand water because we have the right to water, we have the right to education. We have several issues in the University of Zimbabwe. But what then has been done? Nothing has been done.
But yeah, so my follow-up on it is, where there are gaps, how do you, as a young person, participate in making sure that there's laws that solidify those gains for you? How do you, in the lawmaking process, so that you get the laws that you want? For instance, if you feel that the law around sexual harassment and violation is not strong enough, what would you do to ensure that it becomes that strong?
Okay, since lawmaking is a public issue, I think as the youths, we have to take advantage of the public hearing, right? We have to be part and parcel, especially the issues to do with sexual harassment. In universities, we have several issues at which students are being it's called Thai for Marks or Thai for what? Thai for Marks, right? They are being forced into sexual activities by their lecturers. So I think in the constitution we need the law that guides the students, because if they don't if they don't give themselves to lecturers, they are bound to fail the given lectures. So in the constitution, I think as the students or as the youths, we need to stand up for that. We need that law in the constitution that protect us, especially in universities. We have several students waka-affectika kuchikora, some wakato-defer kuchikora because of these issues.
Now, Rumi, are you as youth, going to these hearings, public hearings, are you even, contacting your legislators to make sure that law that protects your interests is put there?
The first problem is that people might not know the Constitution, and of which, as she said, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and of which Section 2 reads that the Constitution is the supreme law, and any act or conduct or practice that is inconsistent with it is unlawful and void to the extent of inconsistency. This meaning that any act that is done contrary to the Constitution is actually unlawful. So it's a matter of young people understanding what the Constitution is first saying. For example, in Section 20, we have that young people that should be given the opportunities to participate in all spheres of life, be it political, economical, or social. So in that part, young people tend to turn a blind eye to what the Constitution actually says. If they ignore that the Constitution says that they have the right to all those opportunities, they would actually move forward to actually argue that they are not being informed of such public hearings. They are not being included in public participation in the lawmaking. And in the lawmaking process, the preamble starts with "we the people." It means that it's everyone who is being involved in that participation in making the law. But then we find out that the youth are not informed of the place and the time of these public hearings, or they are not actually consulted as the public to be told what the suggestion of the law is and what their points of views are on that law, so that they can actually know what actually fits in their problems.
Do you need to wait to be told? I mean, these things are advertised in newspapers. You don't read, is it?
Well, nowadays, few youths read the actual newspapers. Some people will be actually like more of
TikTok,
entertainment, TikTok, Snapchat, and all that. So they would actually need some emphasis on that law and activities that might maybe include recreational facilities. Maybe you call a certain artist to that show or program that would actually bring a lot of young people, because most young people are interested in music and certain artists. So actually merging the law and recreational activities, I think that would actually bring up more participation in the lawmaking process with the youth.
Boris, do you think politicians want to ensure that the young people participate? Do you think they want that?
Yeah, that's a complex spacing. But the reality on the ground is that the government itself does not want young people to be included in these processes. Because I would quote from Frantz Fanon, who says, each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. So
are you discovering it? Now, you've come to my party.
Yes, so in our quest to discover our own future, the government views it as a threat to say, no, we want to discover our own trajectory, we want to come up with our own future and stuff. It becomes a threat to them. That is why they end up obscuring us from accessing such platforms. She talked about public hearings. Some of them are made private. Why privatizing such important information? Young people should be included in those processes and participate effectively.
I think Yeah, at that point, the other problem comes when there is a thin line between subverting the governmental laws and also freedom of association. Some people might actually not understand and know that the rights that they have and the freedoms that they actually have limitations. And also, they have to understand that there are certain channels to be followed to actually exercise that freedom of association and freedom of assembly.
Now, let us talk about these limitations. Who decides to what extent this right is limited, and how fair are these limitations? I want us to talk about this because this then becomes very important on how we relate to that constitution and to our rights.
Okay, well, the Constitution itself, it has limitations to certain rights. So as I've talked about Section 2 of the Constitution, which is the Supremacy Clause, it's actually telling us that the Constitution is the supreme law and certain acts or conducts that are against it are actually unlawful. Then we also have Section 86, which talks about the limitations of a person's right. For example, the right to life. They say that the right to life cannot be limited except for the methods that are placed in Section 78 of the right to life, which states that everyone has the right to life. That is, unless one does not commit a crime which leads to the conviction of the death sentence.
Amazing. You know, as you speak about these rights and these limitations, journalist Hopo Chingono was arrested for his right to freedom of expression and arrested on a law that didn't even exist. You know, I'm currently in court battling charges for doing my work, which is protected in Section 61 and 62. So how do we protect ourselves, as you are saying that the government does not want youth to participate? So how do we then make sure that we participate even without inducement from the government to participate, so that we protect our rights? Boris.
Okay, thank you very much. The issue comes back to us because what I understand is that people power is greater than people in power. So people should identify platforms on which they can converge and agree on pushing certain struggles. For example, let's say when there is an issue of poor salaries, like what is happening in the proletariat right now, the working class. By the way, I'm wearing a t-shirt which is written Restoration of Workers' Dignity. Well, people should converge, the workers should converge and say, no, what can we do to make sure that we fight for our rights in this specific space? So those are platforms that should be said, be it in the media fraternity, yours. You should identify platforms that can unite you as media practitioners to say, no, we are uniting, we are going to defend our rights as journalists. Because we are arrested, Hopo Chimon was arrested, but we have other journalists that have never been arrested. So that is the most important thing. You should find something in common, identify a convergence zone, and then fight back.
Wangai?
Okay. I think as a media student, having seen Hopo Chingono being arrested on a law that does not exist, and seeing Blessed Mhlanga and Chingeto Chidi battling for justice, for exercising for doing their work as journalists, I think it really affects us, especially as students, as upcoming journalists, to do our work freely. Why? Because the right to express ourselves, the right to freedom of the media is being deprived, especially on journalists. So I think we will be afraid to do the work that we want to do, because they are being sued for doing their work.
So do we let our rights just go down the river, the river Zambezi or Limpopo, because we are afraid, or because we have seen those who probably we look up to being arrested?
I think it's so worrisome, because I think those issues have been raised several times, but is there anything that has been done to make sure that those laws are being defended or are being protected? So we can defend those laws in as much as we can do, but that cannot come to pass, especially in Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm. Is it all gloom and doom?
Well, it is up to us. It is upon ourselves to actually fight for those rights, to actually know what rights we have, to know what is lawful and unlawful, and actually envision ourselves and actually use the objectives that are placed for us in the Constitution to be able to push for that freedom, to push for those rights, and to push for our protection.
Mm-hmm. There have been constitutional amendments. How well have you participated in those, and how well do you appreciate the effect of the amendments?
Okay, thank you very much. On amendments, I think we have managed to participate, though I do not believe our participation was taken into consideration, because number one, we had public hearings being disrupted around the country. I attended this other hearing down there in Highfields, Chamisa. The hearing started very well. People were bringing in a lot of insight, a lot of very important points. And then later on, we had a group of youths which bombarded the venue, and the portfolio was forced to close. So this is what is happening. Now, it's coming back to the issue that I've talked about. The government wants to make sure that it limits even our participation. And even after participating, I think our views are not even taken into consideration. This is done ceremonial. They have to just do it because it is supposed to be done, but it is not taken into consideration as it is supposed to be.
So, what do you understand the effect of the amendments? That was the second part of my question.
Yeah, let me talk about the PVO bill, the amendment that has raised a lot of concerns around the country from the citizens themselves and from civil society organizations. This speaks a lot about the continuous closure of the democratic space in our country, because we end up comparing these two dispensations. Number one, the Mugabe regime, and this so-called Second Republic. At least during the Mugabe regime, of course, he was very brutal and stuff, but he did not go to that extent of trying to play around with the constitution to make sure that CSOs are limited in terms of their operations. What is the effect? Of course, those laws are being made here in Harare, that parliament, but they are affecting a citizen down there in Lotito, a citizen down there in Chimaniman who was a victim of Cyclone Idai. Do you know how much CSOs contributed in assisting victims of Cyclone Idai? Do you know how much CSOs contribute in assisting people, students in rural areas and peri-urban schools to pay their fees? Because when Mangudya talks about the PVO bill, he says when the PVO bill is finally signed into law, some organizations are going to be closed. And he even mentioned the Crisis Coalition. He said the Crisis Coalition is going to be their target. What it means is beyond what we actually think, because this is going to mean that a lot of work that was being done by those organizations, there's going to be a vacuum. The work that they were doing is not going to be done at all, because at least if we had a functional government, we're saying no, the government is going to take over and do that work. But we know we have a government that is not that functional, a government which is not that effective. So this means a lot, not just to the CSOs, but to the Zimbabwean citizens at large.
Vongai, have you participated in any of these lawmaking processes, amendments, and do you appreciate the effect of amendments to the Constitution?
Okay, I think youth participation should be so vital in key areas. You can hear that parliamentary portfolios move around for public hearing, but I don't think they are so concerned about the youths. They have to look the key areas at which the youths are found. I think we need to take advantage of the digital media for youth participation in the lawmaking, because most of the youths are now found online. They are now on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think we need to take advantage of the social media so as to participate in the lawmaking processes.
But just now you said youths are poor. So how are they getting data to be on Twitter?
I didn't say they are poor.
You're
but
saying
what I'm saying is they need to be, their decisions should be vital. They need to be heard. So in the lawmaking process, they have to be taken advantage of. So I think the lawmakers have to make use of social media to include the youths in lawmaking.
Yes, I mean, like, we're in the 21st century after all. How many youths out there are still going to the newspaper and actually buying a newspaper to read? Youths are now more of technological aspects. They're more of...
Is that not an excuse to laziness?
No, it's not an excuse to laziness. It's actually finding another method to be able to reach out to the youth. Instead of publishing news in the newspapers, they can also add we have newspapers that are published online, and you can actually use those platforms for more emphasis of the law and teaching of the law. Then also, since the laws are made in Parliament, you can't expect 40-year-olds to be able to understand what the 21st youth need, what they want, what they actually require in their day-to-day lives. So it would actually make more sense to include at least a higher percentage of youths in Parliament to be able to get their insights, to get their first-hand information from the actual youths who actually need those laws, who actually need those regulations.
You said laws are made in Parliament. Is that really correct?
Yes, some laws are made in Parliament. Then there are also some sub-delegated legislation which is made through the delegation of the parliamentaries' lawmaking function to other ministers and also the president.
Because I seem to remember one legislator who once said laws are not made in Parliament, but they pass through Parliament.
Well, the problem is that we have a situation whereby the executive are also part of the legislature. So we have the president, the cabinet, and the senate. We have those people being part of the executive and also being part of the legislature who actually make those laws. Then the parliamentary portfolios who then come in to actually confirm and check those laws in line with the constitution.
Yeah. I think it's an area that you actually need to look into, because law is drafted at bill stage by cabinet, which is the executive, and it is supposed to be read in Parliament, changed and by Parliament playing its role as the legislator. But like he said, you were consulted. Your consultations were not heard because of the whipping system, where the executive will simply whip the legislators to approve what the executive wants. So this is what informed the saying that laws do not pass in Parliament, but they pass through Parliament. But as we close, Boris, I want your final statement, your statement of of intention. What is the place of the young people in constitutional making, in lawmaking, and how should they take their space there to ensure that the constitution is not molested or adulterated by those who are in the twilight of their lives?
Okay, thank you very much. It happens that young people have a sacrosanct role of defending the constitution. So for them to defend the constitution, they have to be well versed with it, because you cannot defend something that you do not know. And then when it comes to protecting the constitution and participation in these processes, number one, they have to be available in those hearings. Of course, I've said, and I still believe, that they do not take those things into consideration, but at least let's go in there and participate. Let's go there and speak out. let's go there and give our views on certain policies that will be crafted. And number two, when it comes to the politics of the country, young people have been involved in politics just as the electorate, as voters. But I would encourage, as we go ahead of 2023, there is an election, a general election next year. I encourage young people to participate in these elections and hold leadership positions as well. They should contest. Let's go and flood parliament and make sure that when the law comes into parliament, we vote against bad laws and vote in support of good laws that are progressive, that would shape a Zimbabwe we would want to live in, a great Zimbabwe.
Do you have any, because part of defending of the constitution is one man, one vote, and a democracy process and voting. Do you have any message around the elections, registering to vote and enjoying that right to vote?
Yes, especially on registering to vote, I would encourage the young people of Zimbabwe to go and register to vote in numbers, especially the students' constituents. We have a lot of students who we have now given up. They've lost trust in elections because of certain reasons, which I would have loved to talk about, but maybe I will do that on another day. But let's go and register to vote. It is our right to vote. Let's make sure we participate in this upcoming election, and we can only participate if you are registered voters.
Amazing. Your closing statements, Madam Wangai.
Okay, I think as the youths, we need to be involved in the process of lawmaking so that we may be able to know our rights and our responsibilities, so that we can be able to defend those rights and not be used and not be used to promote violence. We have several issues of the youths being involved in violence nationwide. So as the youths, we need to be involved in the lawmaking and in the parliament. I think there has to be a number of youths that represent all the youths in Zimbabwe, especially in parliament and of course in cabinet. There has to be the number of students, or at least 10 students or youths representing all the youths in Zimbabwe, so that they have to exercise their rights. And above all, we as the youths, we need to know our rights so that we can be able to defend them. We have the right to education, we have the right to vote, and I emphasize on the point to go and register to vote, to vote for the leadership that we believe will change all our situations and our worries.
But you speak about a number of youths in parliament, in cabinet, and the like. Aren't the youth the bigger number in this country? And why wouldn't you just vote for yourselves?
Of course, the youths are the bigger number in Zimbabwe, right? But they are not the bigger numbers in the parliament or in the cabinet. The youths are being the ones that are affected. They are believed to be the leaders of tomorrow, but how can they be leaders if they are not part and parcel of all the processes that affect their day-to-day lives? So they need to be involved and not be used as agents of violence.
Amazing. Your closing remarks, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. My closing remarks are that since we have a constitution which actually has rights, we should know that the rights also have corresponding to duties. So as much as one individual has the rights or has many rights, they also have, the state also has a corresponding duty to protect those people's rights. And also it is also up to us to be able to understand what the law is, what is lawful and what is unlawful, so that if we want to exhibit and we want to utilize our rights, we are able to use them in a lawful manner, such that we would actually have a defense that when the state comes in and actually attacks a person for using their rights, they're able to know that, no, I actually went through the right channels, I actually protested lawfully, I actually went through the proper lawful channels in order to utilize that right. So it is up to us to be able to be aware of those rights and to be able to participate in associations, in organizations which reach out to the people and which teach on constitutional issues, on legal issues, and to be able to understand the law in general, such that at the end, when we use our rights, we know that the state will protect us as we are using those rights lawfully.
Do you think studying law has given you an advantage in understanding your rights and defending them?
Yes, I think it has, because in certain circumstances you'd actually reach a point, maybe you're driving and you know that you have your license with you, and then a policeman stops you there and they ask you, why are you driving? And there might actually be a certain circumstance whereby a person will be actually partaking in an unlawful act, but yet being ignorant and unaware of the law, you might actually end up paying them or actually becoming the criminal of that case just because you don't know what the law is saying. So once you know the law, you're able to actually protect yourself. Even when someone is perpetrating a crime towards you, you're actually able to determine that this is an unlawful act and I am not wrong, I am right on this one.
Amazing. Thank you very much to my beautiful panel. You're studying law as well?
No, I'm not studying law.
What are you studying?
I'm doing peace and conflict studies.
But you're the legal secretary?
Yeah.
This must be unlawful, eh? This must be unlawful. How can he take the job of a learned colleague? Such is democracy. Such is democracy. Thank you very, very much for being on this panel on the situation right now in proud partnership with We Lead, a youth organization leading to create spaces for development, leading to create spaces for taking the youth forward. An amazing vision, amazing young people taking the spaces of the country Zimbabwe. And I will close by just reading from the Constitution, the preamble of the Constitution, which says, we, the people, united in our diversity by our common desire for freedom, justice, and equality, and our heroic resistance to colonialism, racism, and all forms of domination and oppression. All forms of domination and oppression. Exalting and extolling the brave men and women who sacrificed their lives during the Chimurenga, Umvikela, and national liberation struggles. Honoring our forebearers and compatriots who toiled for the progress of our country. Recognizing the need to entrench democracy. I want to repeat this. Recognizing the need to entrench democracy. Good, transparent, and accountable governance and the rule of law. Reaffirming our commitment to upholding and defending fundamental human rights and freedoms. Acknowledging the richness of our natural resources. Celebrating the vibrance of our traditions and cultures. Determined to overcome all challenges and obstacles that impede our progress. Cherishing freedom, equality, peace, justice, tolerance, prosperity, and patriotism in search for new frontiers under a common destiny. Acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty God, in whose hands our future lies. Resolved by the tenets of this Constitution to commit ourselves to build a united, just, and prosperous nation founded on values of transparency, equality, freedom, fairness, honesty, and the dignity of hard work, and imploring the guidance and support of the Almighty God, hereby make this Constitution and commit ourselves to it and as the fundamental law of our beloved land, which is Zimbabwe. Now, this is the situation right now. This is me, your host, Dara Blessed Mthuli. This constitution, this preamble, speaks of justice, speaks of democracy, speaks of justice. And it says, I like this part. I like this part. Our heroic resistance to colonialism, racism, and all forms of domination and oppression. All forms. Doesn't matter by who. All of them. You must understand the Constitution. You must read it. It's a beautiful document. It is beautiful for you. It is beautiful for this country. It is beautiful for those generations that come after us. This is HSTV in proud partnership with We Lead. Until next time, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on this afternoon.
Dai pasina kupindira kwaishe, echokwadi pasi pano.